right.
Welcome, everybody, to the fourth episode of the Turn 4 podcast. I am Dan Maldonado, joined as always by my trusty co-host here, Tim Reiner. Tim, how are you?
I am good, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very
made
good.
It through the race.
Yes, you did. Finally,
made it to Monday, so I am excited about that.
It was kind of like watching an endurance race, but of course, we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Yeah.
Nice hat, Tim.
You're
very
good?
Snappy. I'm good. I feel good. You don't want to talk about the hat?
Oh, the hat, it's a beach hat. Every once in a while, you got to go to the beach. You got to surf a little bit. So you put the beach hat on and you look much younger than you really are. So for all the guys that are in the mid-40s, get a cool surfing hat and you're good to go.
I do wear hats often, as you know, and I am also in my mid-40s. I am a guy that when I'm sitting on the beach in a hat or sitting anywhere in a hat or otherwise, I look like a guy in his early 50s. Well, but that's totally fine. Mm-hmm. That happens.
But if you shave, you look much younger.
No,
at least I do. I've never seen you with a clean shaving face, so
never will.
You might want to try that out.
I'll write it down.
I shaved today. I had some meetings I had to go to today besides this one. And I figured I'd be, in my best, looking self at the age I'm at, which is mid-40s, like I already said. And it worked out well. I had some good meetings today with some senior folks. And here we are meeting here. And you didn't take the same Monday steps that I did to get out of the shower and shave, but that's okay.
No. I don't shave. I did shave. You can't see it that well, but nevertheless. Hey, we have a naming standard for our podcasts, of course, and they generally are just, round 11, Nashville 2021. Although I feel like I want to deviate from that naming standard only because I want to call this episode Cautions Breed Cautions, or the 4 hours of Music City. I don't know what to think of this race. We're prepared, of course, to speak about it, and we're going to speak well about it, but man, I was in great anticipation of this race because I like Nashville. I was thrilled to see that IndyCar was going to Nashville, and we've had a great run up to it. And it certainly looked like it was a great event, which I'm thrilled to see. But as far as a race, man, we're in desperate need of a do-over.
Yeah, it was a long time sitting in front of the TV. I had a hard time getting through it, but I made it. And I think once you got to lap 60, stuff started to happen. Stuff that we expect to happen in a race, right? Some passing and some good
racing,
running of the cars, and not being under a yellow flag or a red flag. So, what I saw though, Dan, this weekend before the race?
What's that?
I saw you had a prediction on yellow flags and red flags, and you were under on those both.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I was like, he's predicting under on both. I was over on one, I was under on the other, and both were over.
Oh, way over, right? I couldn't have been more off by that. And I'll tell you, I appreciate you bringing that up. The reason I felt that way is because we had seen what we had seen in practice and qualifying, and I figured by the time we got to Sunday, these drivers were going to be able to understand what they needed to do to get around this track efficiently and get around it well and keep a nice, smart race going. Like you said, right? This thing didn't get going until lap 60. So, from lap 1 to 60, it was just, I've never seen anything like this before. Yeah, it was total chaos. Yeah, I was way off. I guess I was willing to give everybody the benefit of the doubt.
And just so everybody knows what the over under was, it was 4.5, I believe, for yellow flags and 1.5 for red flags.
Right.
And you were under on both. And there had to be 7 cautions.
9 total cautions, 2 red flags, all in on this. Champweb.net retweeted this stat earlier in the day, was 1 hour and 6 minutes of green running and 1 hour and 7 seconds of yellow to go along with 28 minutes of red flag. So it was insane. I never expected to see anything like this. So I hope the folks of Nashville and the folks that travel to see that race again next year.
Well, it was 33 laps under caution, which is 41% of the race.
That's crazy. That is
I did
just
the math
crazy.
earlier.
Yes, you did. Good job,
I
Tim.
did, which is crazy. So you have a great event, you have a great host town, you have a ton of attendees, and then you put on a show, and the beginning did not live up to what I think most people expected. But I heard from some of the drivers, and they said that the fans were still all in and cheering, even though there was a lot of yellow flags and yellow laps, and then some red flags as well.
Right. I do hope yeah, you're right. We saw a lot of people still in the stands. It was heartening to see that so many people stuck it out and they stayed in. But they didn't really get that great a show. I mean, the last 20 laps, I suppose, was a really good show, but the first 75% of that race wasn't great.
So I decided to look at my hat, because we were talking about my hat earlier, because I couldn't remember the name, but it's Rip Curl is the name of the hat, which is the surf hat. So for us guys, they're trying to look young, go get one.
And we're not getting paid for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's free advertising for the Rip Curl folks. We appreciate it. Looks great on Tim. They should be a poster boy for this hat.
Well, you got to plug everybody.
That's right. Crazy race, crazy storylines all over the place. And, what presents itself certainly is the guy who won the race, Marcus Erickson, for Target, or I still want to call it Target, for Chip Ganassi Racing. Marcus Erickson comes out of this thing with the most amazing storyline possible. Runs into the back of Sebastian Bourdais, and I'm putting that lightly, right? He was trying to ride over the top of Sebastian Bourdais, gets up in the air, probably all four wheels off the ground, it looked like to me, comes down, amazing, has massive front wing damage for sure. How none of the rest of this car is damaged, I have no idea, but he was moving with great anticipation to get back to the pits to get that front wing changed out. I'm shocked that he didn't have more damage. And he comes around and he finishes this race and wins this thing. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how you script that. Like, I'm going to run over Sebastian. I'm going to take him out. Foyt in general is going to have a bad day overall. And I'm going to come and do a stop and go penalty because that move was really bad going over the back of him. And then I'm going to come out in first and lead 37 laps, which is almost more than Herta. Started 18th and wins the race. So I guess if you're in the back, run over the guy in front of you, get the caution, get a stop and go. There's going to be another caution. That track is very tight, right? And then somehow you're at the front of the pack and you win the darn thing.
It's crazy. You're right. That no way to script this thing. Happy for Erickson, second win of the season. I suppose one of the commonalities between this win and his first win in IndyCar, which was also earlier this season, was bumpy tracks, right? He won here in Detroit and took victory here. So maybe bumpy tracks is a Marcus Erickson strength that we just now are starting to unveil.
But
I think it's total luck. I don't think he was tough. I mean, right? Herta was chasing him down. He was tough. He managed to hold it. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Without a doubt.
If you look at his practice times and everything else, he was 5th, 7th, and 6th, and that would be 5th in the first practice and 7th in the second. And then the warm-up, he was 6th quick. He started 18th, as I mentioned earlier. So he had issues in qualifying, but overall, I think he might have been in that first group that had that yellow flag. So they didn't get a lot of laps in to qualify, but overall, he was good from a practice standpoint, and then started in the back, and then you run Sebastian over, you win.
That's right. First place ahead of his teammate, Scott Dixon, in second place for what I would say was a largely quiet race for Scott Dixon. This is what he does, silent assassin. He doesn't, not a lot of fanfare, not a lot of theatrics going on to Scott Dixon's, racing. Consistent. Absolutely. And I don't
second, finished second, was up there all day, stayed out of trouble.
Without a doubt.
What he needed to do.
Yeah. I think, his experience, he's definitely one of the more experienced guys on the grid. His experience helps him get through some of these races that are just chaotic. And he gets through that. And I think that's what contributes to that. I mean, that second place finish also moves him up to second place in the points championship ahead of Pato O'Ward.
Yeah, he did not have a good day. But talking about Dixon, he came in for his first stop, I believe it was, second stop, one of the two. Didn't even put on new tires. They had 4 laps on those tires. So it was a second stop. They had 4 laps on those tires, didn't change them. From my understanding, never went back in the pits and drove those same tires to second place. So that's just taking care of your car, having a good finish, and looking at the championship.
And very limited running under green.
Yeah, right. So you're not tearing the tires up, and then
That's right.
The track cooled, right? So that
It
totally helps. The sun was going down. It was getting dark. The track temperature went from 120, 130 at the start of the race all the way under 100 by the end of the race. So he was able to take care of those and finish the race in second. So I was concerned when they didn't change the tires. Typically, there was an incident, right? So back in the day, if there's an incident and you have a chance to pit, you always change the tires just in case you pick up some debris.
Always.
Yep. So you don't have a flat. And I was like, he's going to have a flat. There's going to be didn't happen. But he was good all weekend long. If you look at all of his times, second, third, second, when you look at all of the practice times. And I didn't look up practice times for everybody, by the way, but I did for the top 3 because I was curious.
They don't mean anything. The Scott Dixon was good, right? All the fanfare, everything went to Herdomania 2.0, but Scott was always there lurking in the background. So like I said, Scott takes second in the race. He takes second in the championship points, right behind his teammate, Alex Palou.
That's right. But if he wins the championship, like we talked about in the silly season, I could have a prediction come correct.
You could, but very, very unlikely.
I know, but he's got to win the championship first.
Yeah, and for our listeners who haven't gotten around to the silly season podcast, Tim postulates that Dixon would retire if he wins this championship, but
just from full-time racing.
That's what an unlikely scenario. Ahead of Alex Palou, Alex Palou showed some veteran savvy, I think, by staying out of trouble, which was key. He started in 9th because he had an unapproved engine change. He qualified in 3rd, but because he was relegated back because of the engine change, he ended up starting out in 9th, finishing in 7th. So, he kept himself clean. He was championship racing, which I think is the only thing you can do there. You try to be a hero, and you're going to be in the barrier somewhere. And you're going to be in the barrier somewhere on this track because the heroes do not make it around this track. That is all there to it. So he did what he was supposed to do there. And the NTT data car, which you think is the sharpest car.
All day. They ended up in the wall a couple times or pushing people into the wall a couple times.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Oh yeah, we're going to get to that hero. That hero has power, if you know what I'm getting at. Jimmy Johnson, 26th. This race right here, I feel like is rock bottom for Jimmy Johnson. I feel awful for him. He bent up 2 cars leading up to this race. He took the green flag on Sunday in the NTT data car with Carvana wings, with 48 stickers on it to denote that it was his car. They were out. Apparently they were doing some work under red, which is disallowed under the rules. Even saw Jimmy Johnson carrying a front wing around. Yeah. I mean, you got to feel right. Jimmy's doing the right thing. He feels bad for these guys because all the work that they've done this weekend and, putting race cars back together. And he's a good guy. It isn't the reason. His singular act alone is not the reason for his disqualification from the race, but they were doing some work on that car. Whether or not that car was ready to come back out to finish that race, I'm not certain. And NBC didn't really cover that. But, I hate it for Jimmy. I mean, I know I've busted him a little bit on this podcast and privately, but I just hate this for Jimmy Johnson. I wish it would just pop for him.
Yeah. So you mentioned that he had 2 wrecks prior to the race, which he did. And, with Carvana, everybody's going out and voting on the livery in order to have the livery out there that the fans voted. And unfortunately, because he crashed in the warm-up, the livery that was supposed to be out there that was fan voted didn't even get on the track for race day. They had to go to the backup car, which was a different paint job on it. So I know there's another contest to do the paint and to vote. So I don't know if I'm going to go vote this time at this point.
Yeah. Yellow. I saw a car with a lot of yellow on it for this next race at IMS.
It would be fitting.
Yeah. You're right. It would be very well done by you, Timmy. Third place, Andretti Autosport. My guy Hinch, couldn't happen to a better guy.
But hold on, go back.
Come on. Couldn't happen at a better time.
No, I want to talk about Jimmy real quick though, because he did the interview and his interview was awesome. I thought
terrific.
The disappointment that happened, he put everything into perspective, and he is still got his head on his shoulders and he's got his chin up, and he's going to do well in this series. He will. When he starts doing some ovals, I think he'll do really well. And I think he'll come around next season. So this is just a tough track to try to learn on and figure out an IndyCar. So even the comment about the car with the yellow, I think he earned my respect.
Totally agree.
Not that it even matters if it's my respect, but he went to a different level, I thought, on that interview.
Yeah, totally agree with him. I mean, he's not beaten, that's for sure. He understands the mountain that he's trying to climb.
Yep, exactly.
And I think he's trying to address his fans too. And I think that people who are watching him come into IndyCar and seeing him as a 7-time NASCAR champion and somebody who's won at all levels and has won handily, coming in here and struggling. And he addressed it right off the bat. This is not easy, right? And it's something way outside of anything that he's done in his career. So you're right. I think his interview was great.
All right, sorry to interrupt you on Hinch.
It's all right, Hinch, because Hinch is my guy. I am beyond thrilled for a 3rd place finish for James Hinchcliffe in this thing. Couldn't happen at a better time. It's all confirmed that he is not going to be back in that car next year. I don't know where he will land next year. To me, I'd love to see him in that. I put that in our silly season. I'd love to see him have at least one more season back in this. I don't know how likely that is. I think, to me, the more this goes on, it's more likely we're going to see him back behind a mic with an NBC Sports logo on his shirt, is what I really think it's going to be for James Hinchcliffe. I don't know that he has many options. I did see an article by NBC Sports, Nate Ryan, that suggests that Genesis is out after this year.
Yeah, and Hinch's finish, all I can say is wow.
I know.
That's really good for Hinch. I'm super happy for him. I looked up his practice times as well. This is the last one, I swear.
Okay.
But I looked up his practice times, 13th, 19th, 14th fastest. So he wasn't the fastest guy out there, but he was in the right spot at the right time, held some people off like Ryan Hunter-Reay, who finished right behind him.
4th.
Yes. And so when you look at Team Andretti, the 2 top finishers are the 2 that are most likely not going to be there next year.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Hunter-Reay, 4th place, very likely to be the final year with Andretti on this thing. He is discussing the fact that he has options for next year. I don't know what they'll be, but I have a little bit more to talk about later on that one. Hasn't had a podium since Mid-Ohio last year, where he was 3rd. And his podium prior to that in 2019 was also a 3rd at Mid-Ohio. So it has been a very dry period for Ryan Hunter-Reay, with a last win at the final race of the 2018 season in Sonoma. So great finish by him. Luck for sure. Luck for Hinch for sure, where he's at. And no other way to describe it. I'm glad it, couldn't happen at a better time. But this is definitely his last ride in that DHL Honda. 17th place for Alexander Rossi. It was just a tough day for him. He was strong all weekend long. Certainly not to the degree that his teammate Herta was, but he had a coming together with Pato O'Ward on lap 51, bringing out the 7th caution, and where he just wasn't able to rebound from that. And it's certainly clear to me that at Andretti, it's Rossi and Herta as your A1 and your A2 guys, and they're A1 and A2 just depending on any weekend. I think they're that much far ahead of Hinch and Ryan and Ryan Hunter-Ray. It's really theirs to be had.
Agree 100% on that.
Hertamania in
yeah,
19th.
And led 39 laps, the most by anybody in the race. And we know what happened to him, right?
He owned it, right? He owned this entire weekend. I don't do practice scores like you do, but I did it for this one, right? Practice 1 and 2, first, qualified on pole, 4th in the morning warm-up, which means absolutely nothing.
This is the one I did not look up.
You didn't? Yeah. So,
No.
I mean, he owned the weekend. He owned the weekend. He had some oddball pit sequencing. I think, I trust Brian Herta with that. Okay. I do trust Brian Herta with the pit stop sequences. I trust Brian Herta with that immensely. It didn't seem to hurt him. I think he also got a little bit of luck there on lap 54. Resuming on that, pace car had to slow down. They were trying to clean out Rinus VK's car. It was kind of in an odd spot. So the pace car had to slow, and that allowed Colton to get back into line much further ahead of where he would have had the pace car been going the regular race pace on that. And by that time, he had to work his way through the field. So using up his primary tires, using up his brakes. And by the time he got to second place, trying to hunt down Erickson, who was on red. So you mentioned it earlier. Sun's going down. This race lasted a long time. Sun is going down. Track is cooling. Erickson is on the option tire, which shouldn't have had the length of life that it had in it. But I think the cooling conditions helped. I think the slower turn speeds helped. And it helped him get there, because in any of the places where Herta was really, really close to Erickson was in a place you were never going to pull off a pass. I don't care who you are. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that allowed Erickson to save his tires and conserve, but he had the red tires. So when he had to wind it up and take off, he had all the grip that he needed to come out of those corners and pull away from Herta. So Herta's best choice there was to get deep into braking. He had a couple of quick flat spots. His brakes were glowing red. And I think it was just a matter of time before something went bad there. And it did, of course. I would just say lap 74 is when he tried to take that wall down there. The first thing that came to mind on this situation, Tim, was Ganassi Racing. If you can't win it, finish second. And if you can't finish second, finish third, and so on and so on. And
he's young and he dominated all weekend. So he wanted the victory so bad.
Without a doubt. Fun to watch. It was fun to watch.
Said he tried to take down the wall on that corner. So he was trying to widen the track a little bit. He just got in there too hot. And that's where he was trying to make up his time. And he burned his tires up. We had to go through 4 or 5 different people in order to get behind Erickson. And so in the process, I think he burned his tires up a little bit. And then he was on Erickson, and then he made the one bobble. In that same corner, he took the wall out. And after that, he just couldn't catch him, and he was trying too hard and took the car beyond its limits.
Yeah. And I feel bad for him, but like you said about Jimmy Johnson, if you look at Colton's interview, he was a pro, man. He was really good. He understands he made a mistake. It wasn't great. He owned up to it. He's a champion, whether a true champion because he's got a trophy sitting on a shelf somewhere or not, he's a champion in my mind, without a doubt. For
sure.
Yeah.
And I missed his interview because my DVR was all used up by how long that race was, and I didn't have time to. It couldn't record all the interviews, so I'm gonna have to go back and look at that one.
I know it's
That's my plan.
Yeah, that race was long, man.
They zoomed in on him when he was in the back of the safety truck, and you could tell he was really disappointed in
Oh,
the
yeah.
situation there, and getting his thoughts together and what happened. But it was his weekend to lose, and he did that.
Yeah. Fifth place, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, Graham, Rahal, another quiet race, with a solid finish for Graham. Given the carnage and the epidemic of yellow flags, I think it was a smart finish and one that suggests, he finished the best he possibly could. Graham wasn't overreaching or overdriving the car by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's in a good spot and took advantage of it.
Yeah. And you mentioned that Herta finished first in the first practice session as well as the second practice session, but fourth in the warm-up, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So who finished first in the warm-up?
Graham.
Oh,
yeah.
You're right. That's true. So
and it
he had a car
nothing.
under him, right?
That's right.
He had a car under him and he did well.
He did. He had a car under him. It was all one piece and it was all his own livery.
That is true. Didn't bump into anybody from what I saw and finished in front of his two teammates.
That's right. Again, teammate with Santino Ferrucci, who's I think still in a long-term audition there with Rahal, Lanigan Racing. I think, this was definitely a marked improvement over his performance at Mid-Ohio. He did knot up a couple of cars at Mid-Ohio. Santino ran a very clean race, finished 11th here. Again, similar to Graham, I think, this tends to be the theme. If you ran a quiet race and you kept your wits about yourself, then, you finished and you finished in a reasonably good spot.
He's Sato for next year.
Absolutely he is. And I think next year started for him. My theory there is he's definitely going to be in that high V car next year for Rahal.
Yeah, he had an interview where he was talking about that's what he was working on, was working with those sponsors to make sure that they were all on board with him. And he tried to, continue his streak of good finishes here, and he stayed out of trouble, like he said. It seems like he's matured, and I think he'll stay, even though I made different predictions in the silly season.
Yeah, I think he will. And to your point about the sponsor, I think you're spot on about that. Is and the name escapes me. Somebody in the Alpine Driving Academy is coming over to race for Rahal at IMS during that road course, and it is not a Hy-Vee sponsored car. It's back to MyJack. So I think that does kind of speak to the fact that Hy-Vee is very high on Santino Ferrucci. So I think that's likely where we're going to see that land if they can pull that whole budget together and put that program together for next year.
Next week, I'm putting my Hy-Vee hat on. So
you should absolutely
see how that looks.
Yeah. Sato finished 25th. He was involved in the lap 20 mess caused by our friend Will Power coming back over the bridge. From here forward, I'm just going to refer to this as the parking lot, as the Will Power parking lot that started there on lap 20, because a lot of people got caught up in that, and it ruined a few drivers' finish. We'll talk about that when we get to Team Penske, but it was a very ill-advised move by Will, and it jammed up about 6 guys, Sato and Rinus VK and Cody Ware, and amazingly Hinch was in there, and he still finished up as high as he did, and third, and Will Power just caused that mess, and that's where everything kind of came apart for Will Power.
This is going to be the only week we
go
through 6 teams before we get to Team Penske.
Isn't that crazy?
It's going to be the only week.
It makes absolutely no sense. And here's right. We're going to coin Ed Jones in the Sebastian Bourdais Sealmaster Honda.
Yes.
In 6th place. Solid race for Ed Jones in the number 10 car. Ed's best race result since a previous 6th at the Indy GP in the spring of 2019. That's where Ed Jones, and he didn't race in 20. That's where Ed Jones has been. So good for him, good for Coyne, good for Vassar, good for Sullivan, good for all of them, because that was a solid finish. He kept it clean, and he did what he needed to do to bring that car home.
Yeah, a lot of people up front that you would not expect, but I guess in a crazy race that you have, expect the unexpected. And Ed Jones, I don't know how he did it. I was watching a little bit there, but
Yeah, me neither.
obviously he stayed clean, had some good pit stops, and had some good yellow flag luck, in my opinion. But good for Ed. It's a little too late, but good for Ed.
Yep. Speaking of luck kind of running out a little bit for my friend, Roman Grosjean, I think he had a strong weekend, certainly not what, Rossi and Herta had, but he had a very strong weekend, qualified in sixth. He led only 4 laps, but he was the only guy to lead laps other than the race winner and Herta, who was the weekend winner. So he had a good, again, another odd sequence of pits that kind of got him out of contention when he was forced to pit on lap 52. And that pretty much just put him behind. And that was it for him. I mean, you're just not going to knife through this race. I think you just wanted to get through some sort of finish, which put him back into 16th. I still say it. I know I've said it a couple of times here, but to see Roman win before the end of the season would not surprise me one bit.
Yeah, and I think it's a team call. That's how you get back in 16th. Like he was up front. They got to make better calls, I would imagine, to keep him up there. But again, it's a crazy race. You don't know where you're going to end up. I think they did the best they could. I think even with Herter, he had some weird pitch strategy too, but they were able to keep him up front. So yeah, it's disappointing it was back in 16th. But like you said, he's the only other lap leader. There was only 3 cars that led laps, and he was super happy to lead laps. He had mentioned that in a Twitter post, I believe. So, he's going to win. If not this season, for sure next season. If he's
totally agree.
I see him in a different seat. So, yeah, it's good to see him out there though. He seems very personable. Seems great for IndyCar. Great family, from what I can tell. Everything on that front, and just a genuinely good guy. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm thrilled to see him here. It's been a resurgence for his career. It's good to get him some confidence back. Right. I mean, he ran around at the back with Haas in Formula One, and it's been a long time since he's had this much attention and fanfare. So I'm thrilled for him. I think he's a nice guy. He seems like a very nice guy. He's got a very genuine face. He's very genuine on his interviews. The firefighters love him, which I think that's cool. That's like an organic grassroots sort of marketing thing that these firefighters in different cities are bringing him shirts, and adding these to his collection. I just think that is so cool.
Yeah. And you mentioned his smile. It radiates.
Yeah, totally agree. Cody Ware, no reason to smile this weekend for Cody. This was his second tryout in IndyCar. I think through no fault of his own. I think this race was a mess. And I think he was just a victim of circumstance. He was also caught up in the willpower parking lot on lap 20, which I think just put him behind at some point. He was in 10th place. I don't know how that worked. He was running in the top 10 at some point, and then he was out, and then was parked by IndyCar because he couldn't maintain the minimum safe speed. So not only did we have a race dominated by yellow flags and with over an hour of yellow running, but we had 2 cars disqualified from the race, Jimmy Johnson and Cody Ware. Again, I don't blame Cody one bit for what happened to him here. I think it's just bad luck. I think it's bad timing. I hope to see him back in the car soon, somewhere else where he can take another run at it. Aero Mclaren, moving on. Felix Rosenqvist in 8th place. Pato Award in 14th. The first thing I'm going to say about Aero Mclaren is those liveries were awesome this weekend. The paint jobs on those cars were bad. I loved them. I think they look great. Both drivers had a clean race. They finished those cars still looking very smart at the end of that race. I know he keeps saying about this, 33 laps and the red flags and everything. It's an achievement, man. They brought the cars home in one piece with everything else that was going around them in mid-pack, qualifying in mid-pack. I think it's definitely achievement. Award slips to third place behind Dixon in the season championship, which I think that's okay. We still have some time left there. He's still kind of, in my opinion, the outlier for that. To win that, I still think it's Palou and or Dixon's to win that. And this goes on the announcement that McLaren is taking 75% interest in the team. How do you feel about that, Tim?
I think that's great. That's good, I guess. So Sam Schmidt is taking a little bit of a back seat there, selling part of his interest. And yeah, I like it. And what I want to hear is that another F1 team's coming into IndyCar and building a team. That would be awesome. So hopefully others follow suit. I don't know of anything in the works, but yeah, I think it's good. And I think with that, they want to go to a third car. So that'll be even better. So yeah, I'm good. Hopefully they can bring some technology back to the series and bring that to really, bring that technology level up. So that's what I'm looking for with Aero Mclaren.
Me too. I think that they definitely have the resources, right? They're the winningest team, or one of the winningest teams in Formula One. I think they're the second winningest team behind Ferrari in Formula One. So they definitely have the tech. They know where they're going with this. They have the expertise with it.
Yeah, and I think it takes the big three teams to big four teams now.
I agree with you there. I think they're missing a little bit of a piece with the drivers, right? Bringing somebody in there. I don't know who comes in or when they add a third car, but I need to go back to one thing.
You got Pagenaud going there.
I had Pagenaud going there, but I want to change my mind with Pagenaud right now. When I did our silly season podcast, I had anticipated that Erickson's deal at Ganassi was done. So I just figured that
it was
that he would be there for next year, that he would continue on with Ganassi. That's not the case. According to NBC Sports, Nate Ryan here, I am looking at this, which takes me back to my original prediction when I thought that Erickson was not signed for Ganassi next year. And that is that Erickson, Formula One veteran, takes his Husky Chocolate sponsorship, which is a McLaren Formula One sponsor, to Aero Mclaren as the third car next year. And I think that's maybe why Zach Brown is playing that coy. Well, we could add it next year. Economics are not necessarily the function. We want to put somebody in there who can win, somebody who's going to help us, yada, yada, all the things that you say when you're trying to add a driver, other than the budget part. But I think that's where Erickson goes. If Ganassi lets him go and does not re-sign him, then I think that's the natural spot for him to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me makes a lot of sense because of how it lines up with the sponsors.
You've convinced me. I don't have a way to argue that. That seems to make the most sense. Unless Erickson keeps winning, then Ganassi's not letting him go.
Yeah, like I said a couple of podcasts ago, I make it up and I make it look good.
Nothing wrong.
Meyer Shank,
right?
Yeah. Moving on, Meyer Shank Racing, Kester Nevis in ninth place.
I was trying to think of the saying. I think it's fake it till you make it.
That's it. That's totally it.
Yeah.
It's my entire career in a nutshell right there.
There.
Meyer Shank Racing, Elio Kester Nevis in ninth, Jack Harvey in 15th. I would say that this is a tremendous result for Elio. He hasn't been in the car since Indy 500, where he won his fourth championship, of course. But, the Shank cars are very well prepared. So it's not as if he was getting in a car that wasn't, prepared to race this race and to do well. So he did do well there. He did finish ahead of Rossi and Herta. Just saying.
Who did?
Elio Kester Nevis.
I figured he'd have a top 10. That was my prediction.
Yeah.
And I think I predicted on one of the Twitter surveys that was out there, and he did it, 9th. And then Jack Harvey had a great qualifying and he fell back again.
Yeah. I think he had some, he was a victim of some other circumstances and just couldn't get himself together there.
Yeah,
with that.
something with pit stops, I think.
Yep.
Pit stop strategy moved him back. It just killed him, unfortunately. But he was quick all weekend and talking about Jack. He was quick all weekend, qualified well, and didn't have a great result, unfortunately.
Right. I still think he's a good driver. I think he's a quality driver. I like him. I like him. Don't give me the look. I like him. He's gonna do great things at Ray Hall next year, which I fully expect him to go there, and he'll be replacing Takuma Sato in that Ray Hall Letterman car. So here we go. Finally, right? Team Penske, top Penske finisher, hometown guy, Joseph Newgarden, 10th place, followed by pinball Will Power in 14th, victim of his own teammate, Simon Pagenaud in 21st, also victim of his own teammate, Scotty Mclaughlin in 22nd place. I said after Mid-Ohio, and I'll let you take this one away from me. I said after Mid-Ohio that Newgarden making a run and winning this championship would shock me. I still mean that. And the Nashville result proves my point. There is some level of preparation that Penske has or has not that's just impacting their results.
Yeah, you're saying now that Roger owns the series, right? So he's not watching the team as closely, and they're not performing as well as they used to. So I think that's what you're getting at. But
that is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, Newgarden had that incident really early, which messed up the toe on his front of his car. The steering wheel was a little out of whack. So a 10th place finish, given that, I think it's a good result. Will punted both of his other teammates to the back.
Yep.
So you got to look at that. So Will was the guy that was looking to be the hero of the day and didn't succeed. He was trying to move himself to the front of the pack there. But yeah, I think Newgarden still has opportunities. There's still opportunities with the last few races here that he can make a run. I still think so. I know he's a little far out, but yeah, I think he's going to be top 3 in the final championship. He's 4th right now. So I say he moves up 1 spot.
I don't.
At least
5. I'd put him at 5th place.
All right.
We talked about that. The team, it was just a bad result for the team. Maybe there's some weird team dynamic there. I've never seen a Penske driver bouncing off of Penske drivers the way that Will Power did in this race. I don't know what the heck that was about. It's just unbelievable. It is definitely something that you would never expect. Newgarden was caught up in Will's parking lot, which caused a, ill-advised move. And his car was already bent, which again, I don't know how his car was bent from brushing whatever it is that he brushed, but Erickson, the eventual winner, took flight for a couple of seconds, and his car still managed to get to the end of that race. Mm-hmm. Scotty Mclaughlin had a tough race there. He got spun by Ed Jones on lap 16 and again on lap 41, tangled with Dalton Kellett and Will Power. And that was pretty much the end of Scotty's race for that one. I don't know what's going on at Penske this year. Roger owns the series. He's moved on and he's doing some other things, which pretty much ensures that it's Tim's show. And, Tim's no slouch. I mean, Tim's been doing this a very long time. So something's going on there. What it is, don't know. Don't know if it's team dynamic. Don't know what it is. I can't imagine it's investment in the team, because there's no team that invests more in their team than Penske.
Yeah, but the 3 races prior to Nashville, they were in the hunt to win all of those. And really it goes back 4 races, I believe. And so Nashville was just a crazy race altogether, and Will contributed to that. But I still think they're pretty close to the top of their game. They just haven't had a lot of breaks. Newgarden, as I said in previous podcasts, that he was in a position to win 3 in a row, mm-hmm. or at least Team Penske was, because I think Will was one of those guys. But they just didn't have it this weekend, and Will was more interested in knocking people into the wall. So yeah, we'll see what comes out. I think they're going to do really well going back to Indy next week. So
I think so too. Yeah, go back home to Indy, and I think regroup them.
They won't be 7th on the list.
No,
For our next podcast.
that's for certain. But something there's just, to me, I just feel like there's some. Will Power is driving or drove this weekend like he was the guy looking for a contract. He was not driving like the guy who had signed, what alleges to be, a multi-year deal with Penske at the beginning of this season. Pagenaud,
yeah, like desperation, right?
Yeah. Just it's some odd desperation. He's definitely lower in the points than he has been in the past. He has no pole positions, and he is Mr. Pole Position. He has no pole positions this season. So it could be that, right? It could be starting to, creep up on him where he's starting to hear these footsteps. And it's pressing him into, dumb things.
You still have your license plate holder that says Penske, right? You
Always
take that off because
have
of
my
their
license
results?
plate holder. Always will have that license plate holder. It says Team Penske.
Okay.
Had that a long
I didn't
time.
know if you were changing it to Aero Mclaren.
No, I'm a fan,
Okay.
but I'm not that big a fan.
Yeah. I didn't know if you took it off because of their results this year.
Yeah. Ed Carpenter Racing, 12th place by Connor Daly, 24th place by Renus VK. Connor, a good, smart race. 12th place was an achievement for Connor. You've got me starting to look at practice times, which is just killing me because I put no stock in practice times. Practice 1, 22nd for Connor. Practice 2, 23rd for Connor. And he started in 20th place.
Wow.
Kept his nose clean.
I'm
right?
impressed you're looking at practice times. I feel like
I'm ashamed that I'm looking at practice times, but nonetheless, here I am.
like Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice.
Talk
Are we really talking about practice?
We're talking about practice.
We're talking about practice. I like that.
Renus VK, he was caught up in the Will Power parking lot. He was slammed.
I got to check the warm up now. I'm just going to interrupt you because I need to check the warm up for this guy and see where he was at.
Slammed 15th. From behind by. Oh, there you go. Further proof. Slammed from behind by Sato was Renus VK in the Will Power parking lot. He tried to resume later on. I think that car was very, very broken, but they were just trying to get him out there, get some times and do whatever. But he crashed out again. So, bad luck for Renus.
The race car was track ready or track fit, and they sent him out anyways. And then he crashed right there in 1 and 2, right?
Yeah, and they told him too, right? Like, hey, be careful. This thing may not be ready to go. And they sent him out anyway, which I don't understand that.
Adds to the yellow counts.
Yeah, adds to the yellow counts, adds to,
that was the whole pit stop situation too, because his car was in 1 and 2. Yeah. The pace car had to slow way down, and then everybody that should have been behind the field blended with the field.
Exactly.
And so Herta was like, I should be number 1. I should be in first place here. Yeah. And it ended up he was 4th, but based on the blend line, and no one knew where the blend line was. So at the end of the day, the officials had to say, this is where the blend line is. This is how it works, even though it was in an odd position based on where the corner was and where the exit to pit road was. So some reconfiguration of the track might be needed.
Oh, without a doubt. There needs to be some reconfiguration of this track.
Yeah.
A little less walls. I love the bridge, but I can't get off on that tangent right now. Because right now I got to talk about car.
I don't know if I love the bridge.
I love the bridge. I think it was picturesque. It looked great. Long straightaways. I love the hill like that. I think the bridge is awesome. I really do. I think the bridge is awesome.
You need to have more circuit on the other side of the bridge, right? So you get on the other side of the bridge and you do practically a U-turn in an area that you can barely get a bicycle through.
Yeah.
And come back through, which is fine. I just think you got to expand that side of the track a little bit and have some more area for passing over there. So yeah, the bridge is nice.
Yeah, earlier today, I was talking to somebody about the race, and we referred to that section on the other side of the bridge as the Zaxby Triangle because it was, had all the Zaxby signage in it, real narrow corridor there, barely enough for a couple of bicycles to get through. And that was it. And then they were just on their way back, and it was just super narrow. So good to have that bridge there.
Transition off the bridge onto the regular road and then back on because cars were, back to Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
When you're looking at that final warm up, he bottomed out, which caused him to, spin and wreck that car. The livery I wanted to see on the track that day for the race. And it was all because of that transition and just the ride height was too low. So they got to work on that. So if they get that right, I'll like the bridge too.
Carlin Racing. your team and mine, Carlin Racing. Max Chilton. Max Chilton completed all 80 laps to finish in 18th place, kept it clean, not much to report. I don't mean to shortchange our friends at Carlin Racing and Max Chilton, but clean race is something to behold after this one, particularly since Max started 21st, which could potentially have hurt him with all the incidents out there. You're going to look up his practice times, aren't you? They mean nothing. So,
well,
he finished 18th. He started in 21st.
Days and not a laugh that his final practice session, he was last. He was the last guy. He was 27th. And he, being 27th in the final practice, I wasn't expecting anything out of him. So I'll give him kudos for 18th.
Absolutely. And he completed all 80 laps, which I think in this thing was an absolute achievement. Foyt Racing, Dalton Kellett in 23rd. Sebastian Bourdais was run over by the eventual race winner to finish in 27th place. Dalton was off on lap 2. It looked like his car just shut down in the middle of one of these acceleration zones. And so did they say that? Because I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was something with the electrical system.
Okay. So the car just stopped. So it was just bad news for them right from that start. On top of the idea that, Bourdais got run over by Erickson. And then in lap 41, he was caught up in the Willpower parking lot and McLaughlin. So I think that just bad luck. We had some guys out here that were just the beneficiaries of the best luck possible. And there were guys out here who just had the worst luck possible. And I would definitely say that's Foyt Racing was just victims of bad luck. Sucks for Foyt. I hate to see this for that team. Legendary owner undoubtedly a legendary owner. Guy's been, an IndyCar staple for 6 decades. And
at least.
I hate to see that, with them there. So
you mentioned Chilton. Sorry, I'm moving back to another team.
We're going to go back.
You said he completed all 80 laps, which he did. He was the last guy to complete all 80 laps. Is that why you noted it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I went and checked because the guy behind him didn't complete all 80 laps.
I'm very well prepared. And for the people who are not watching this on YouTube, because we don't post them on YouTube, I'm noted up, babe. I know what's going on.
Yes.
All right, so
fly by the seat of my pants.
We almost segued into the track ahead of time, but I do have some things with this track. Talked a lot about the number of cautions. We talked about the red flags. I don't ever remember a race that looked like this, especially one where weather or something didn't play a part into all of the mess that was on the track there. When Nashville was announced, I was excited by it. I think the city is cool. I think it's a cool place. I think it's pretty thrilling. Do you know where Bridgestone's U.S. headquarters is?
Yeah, I do. Somewhere in Nashville.
That's right.
It's in the Tennessee area.
So I feel like maybe there's some contributing factor there with bringing a street course to Nashville with Bridgestone, the parent company of Firestone, bringing that there. So if that's the case, good for them. I don't care. That doesn't bother me one bit. I think that's good for them. I think it's good for the area. I'm glad that they brought that together. My feeling is I think there's definitely some track improvements. Like you said, there's some grinding that could take place there to help some of those transition areas. I think that's definitely where that is. Hopefully year 2 is good. You got to keep those locals engaged. You got to keep the people who drove and spent, a weekend in a great city to see a great race. I think they took part of a great event, but the race was just kind of a dud. So I hope that next year they come back with a vengeance, make some changes to that track and pull it together.
I think they had 60-some thousand for the race day. So hopefully they saw a good enough show to come back and see it again next year. And I think they can make some modifications to the track. That'll be good. that'll help that race out too. And plus everybody having at least one weekend under their belt there will help that event along too, and to make sure there's not 9 cautions again.
Yeah, I just, something's got to be done. I don't think you get away with it a second year. I think maybe you get a pass and people come back next year, and the organizers do what they need to do to drive some improvement on it. And hopefully we'll see some people back. Hey, I talked a little bit about the silly season during this podcast and this review.
It's hard not to.
It is definitely hard not to until things start to come together. So I want to make one prediction that I like, because it's all breaking news since we did the silly season podcast 2 weeks ago, with Jack Harvey choosing not to re-sign with Meyer Shank Racing. We know pretty well that Ryan Hunter-Reay is not going to be back in that DHL Honda next year. Might we see Ryan Hunter-Reay have a final season in that Meyer Shank car that's recently been vacated by Jack Harvey? It's a Andretti satellite team, right? They have technical support with them. They're a good team. And I think that's somewhere that Ryan Hunter-Reay can go in there, teammate to Elio Castroneves, who's already confirmed there, and run a very smart campaign and smart program next year to thank his fans and have a proper retirement tour. What do you think, Timmy?
I think that'd be great for Ryan Hunter-Reay. That'd be a good send-off, and it would be a way not to just shove him out of the team. So I like it. That's a good theory. You must have stayed up last night thinking about that a little bit after the race, but it makes sense to me, not the way you explained that. And so, yeah, I think it's a possibility, but I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. He could stay, in the main Andretti stable too, potentially.
He could. I don't think it's likely. I think that it's likely that Grosjean goes into that DHL Honda. I think that the car that will eventually be vacated by James Hinchcliffe will be driven next year by the eventual Indy Lights champion. I think they'll take that $1 million bonus money and put it to good use there at Andretti and put that guy in that fourth Andretti car.
I don't think Meyer Shank wants to be a single car team. So
no,
if it makes sense to have Ryan Hunter-Reay in there, then I think they'll do it.
And he's a known commodity. And again, the link up with Andretti, I think, just makes that the most natural bridge move for him to move over there. And it's not a team where, Ryan's necessarily going to be running around any worse than he's been. And I know how bad that sounds. Please, Ryan Hunter-Reay fans, don't write me, any more dear knuckleheads. I think, he's a good guy. He's a good driver. He's had a dry spell. So I don't know that he would go over to Shank and do bad or tarnish his career or tarnish his history by any stretch of the imagination. I think it would actually be a pretty good thing for him to have somebody new in his ear and have some new, fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Right. A new broom sweep to clean. So I just have a couple of things here, Tim, before we get ready to conclude this podcast. The first thing I want to say is, all condolences to the family and friends and colleagues of Bob Jenkins. Right before we went to air here with this podcast, we were made aware that Bob passed away at the age of 73 after an 8-month battle with brain cancer. So definitely condolences to Bob's friends and family there. Also want to send a quick shout out to Robin Miller, who you and I both love and adore. Robin Miller, everything about him. We know that he is putting on a good fight, and he has a lot of support and a lot of people rallying around him in support of Robin Miller. So definitely, sending all the good wishes up to the universe on behalf of Robin Miller and Robin's family too. And then with that said, we're about to conclude our 4th podcast here with this thing. We have over 150 downloads. We've got downloads that are just amazing to me, not just in the US, but we've got what seems to be a decent fan base in Canada. We have some downloads in Germany and Sweden. So we want to give a shout out to everybody. Beijing, China. Yeah, in the Caribbean as well. So
They
this
like us
has,
down there.
yeah.
It's my surfing hat.
There
There's
it
a
is.
connection.
It's definitely the serving it. So, this has exceeded my expectations. I tried to temper these as best I could because I knew it was going to be a slow burn, which is totally fine. I get to sit with my dear friend every 2 weeks and talk about IndyCar. So a couple of things that I love to do. And
we're going viral, Dan.
We
it's not gonna
do.
be a slow burn.
Somewhere. Yeah. Somewhere along the line. So, big shout out to the people. So we thank you for all that. Tim, before we go, final words?
I just want to say on that slow burn thing, I got some intel from my nieces who are big social media people, and they gave me some tips on how to get this thing going. So we still have to talk about that off air before we talk about it on air. But I think we'll go pretty quick here, meaning that we'll get a lot of listeners, and we'll have to give thanks to a lot of people as we grow and expand here. But I'm looking forward to the next event.
Me too.
The Big Machine Spike Coolers Grand Prix. I guess I need to drink some of those this week to get ready for that event. But that's happening August 14th is what I say. Yeah.
So looking forward to that. After the break here, we've got some back-to-backs going on. So always a good show at IMS and the road course. And it's a NASCAR doubleheader weekend with Xfinity running on Saturday and IndyCar on Sunday. So that's going to also put some butts in the seats that are not normally in the seats, maybe for an IndyCar race.
I think it's the other way around.
Is it? I'll take your word
Indy
for it.
On Saturday, Xfinity on Sunday.
Gotcha.
But
so
that's okay.
Should be good, should be fun, and we'll be right back here to do it again after next week's race. Continue to send us your emails and your thoughts to us at the email, and then check us out at turn4podcast.com and definitely the Twitter handle as well. So we're not hard to find. With that, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Always good. Always a pleasure to hang out with you, and look forward to next week.
As do I. So thank you, and we will see you all right here next week. Have a good week.